Hello. Welcome to our Wednesday night walk through the book of Proverbs. My name is Pastor James Rafty, Senior Pastor of Central Baptist Church in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. If you have not joined us for the first 10 chapters of Proverbs, you are welcome to find those on our website at orcbc.org. We're going to be walking tonight through Proverbs chapter 11, but before we get started with that, let's start with a word of prayer together. Father, we come again to study of your word, and we thank you so much for the privilege of being called your children. We thank you so much that you, the creator and the sustainer of the universe, God Almighty, the righteous and holy true one, has given us the revelation of yourself through your word. And we have your word and the freedom to study your word together. So I pray that tonight as we open this up, that your Spirit would guide us through the study of this word. Help us to have our lives molded and changed by your word, Father, not just words off of a page, but truly words of life, words to live by. And we thank you for the opportunity to study that in freedom in this great country. And I pray for those who are tuning in and watching, Father, that their lives would be impacted and changed by the study of your word. In Jesus' name we pray it. Amen. Well, if you have your Bibles, I invite you to join me by turning to Proverbs chapter 11. Proverbs is a wonderful book. If you haven't joined us so far, you've missed a great study about the wisdom that is found in Proverbs. Solomon is writing and telling us basically there's two ways to live life. There's God's way, which is a way of wisdom and integrity, a way of righteousness. And there's man's way, or the departure from that. He uses a lot of imagery of adultery, but just basically means that it's something that's not meant for you. God created this world, and he has given us a standard and a way of living, a way that leads to righteousness and holiness, a way that leads ultimately at the end of life to the blessing of finding him as our Father. And if you not follow that path, you follow a path of destruction. If you follow the path of the world, it is a path that leads to death and destruction and ultimately separation from God. And so through Christ, we have the ability to be in connection with God, and then he gives us that insight and that standard of how to live a life that is representative of what it means to be a child of God, and that is found in the wisdom of Proverbs here that is written down and preserved for us. So Proverbs chapter 11, we're into that part in Proverbs now where it is what you think of as proverbial sayings. It is the short little pithy sayings that have a meaning of some sort. And so we're going to walk through these. Some of these I'll make comments on. Some of them then are pretty self-explanatory and don't need a lot of comments. Some of them, what we're going to see tonight, is that they really kind of restate the same thing, that there be two or three proverbs that have the same basic meaning but are stated in a little bit different way. So we'll see some of that. So let's look together at Proverbs chapter 11, starting in verse 1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Now, think about this in the word picture of a balance. You've seen those scales, the balance, where if you're going to buy 1 pound of grain, let's say, then they would have a standard 1 pound weight that they would put on one side, and then they would pour the grain in until they became even. And once they were even and balanced out, you knew you were purchasing 1 pound of grain. What was happening, people that were evil or nefarious or greedy, they would take and they would tell you, oh yeah, this is a 1 pound weight, but maybe they had shaved a few ounces off of it. They had, instead of 16 ounces, it would be 11 ounces or 12 ounces or something, just enough off of it that you couldn't tell it by just picking it up, and you would just have to trust them that they were saying, yes, this is a 1 pound weight. And they would put that on the scale, and then they pour the grain in, and it comes even. You think you're buying a pound of grain, but really you've only bought 11 ounces or 12 ounces. And it was a way for the merchant to sort of cheat the people. You know, they were paying a full price for a pound of grain, but they were only getting 11 or 12 ounces. So Solomon is saying that's a way that is an abomination to the Lord, that we should treat people fairly and righteously. If we are telling them they're getting a pound of grain, then we better be giving them a pound of grain. In today's world, the same thing applies. We should treat people with integrity, treat people with righteousness, and if we say we're going to do something for them, then we do it. It's kind of like letting your yes be yes and your no be no. It's giving yourself fully in a way of integrity. And a lot of what we're going to see tonight in Proverbs chapter 11 is dealing with exactly that, is being a life of integrity, living a life of integrity. So Proverbs chapter 1 or chapter 11 verse 1 just simply means that if you're living out of balance, out of scale, you're not treating people fairly or righteously, that is an abomination or it is detestable to the Lord, as the Christian Standard Bible would say. All right, verse 2, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom. Pretty self-explanatory. We don't like being around prideful, arrogant people. We like to be around people who are humble and who build us up instead of always trying to build themselves up. And so if you're a prideful person or arrogant person, that's disgraceful is what he's saying. You want to be with humble and thinking about other people more than you think about yourself, and putting them first or putting their needs into the equation. And so it's not necessarily being a doormat, being humble, but thinking about others and building others up, caring about their needs and their wants and their desires. And if you do that, there's wisdom in that, is what Solomon says. Verse 3, the integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Pretty self-explanatory. If you're walking in integrity, which means that you are who you say you are, even when no one's looking, then you're going to be guided, and we're going to see a couple of the other accompanying verses here in a minute. Guiding them, leading them out, doing the right thing is going to guide you in the right direction. But if you're crooked or you're wicked, then it's going to destroy you. Verse 4, riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. What that simply means is if you think of riches as money, or you could think of it as fame or popularity, then when it comes to the end of days, whenever death comes, whenever the end of times come, that's not going to give you anything. It's going to be empty. It's not going to provide you the security that you need. But the only thing that's going to provide you that security is righteousness, or again, walking in the way that the Lord has planned for us. Now, verse 5 is sort of a same thing. It's a restating. And like I said, it's a proverb that's going to say basically the same thing. It's just going to state it in just a little bit different way. The righteousness of the blameless keeps his way straight, but the wicked falls by his own wickedness. So verses 4 and 5 are complementary verses, and so you can sort of take some of the same wording and get the same meaning. So in other words, we could say that riches not profiting in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivering from death, as verse 4. Well, righteousness and blamelessness and keeping your way straight or guiding you, these are all of the right things. Verse 6 follows the same thing. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the treacherous are taken captive by their lust. We can say treacherousness and wickedness. All of these things are the same thing. They're synonyms. Righteousness, integrity, all of these things are synonyms. And even verse 7 is going to relate back up to verse 4. Verse 7 says, when the wicked dies, his hope will perish, and the expectation of wealth perishes too. Verse 4, again, riches not profiting or not having anything that you can depend on in the day of wrath. It's the same sort of thing. It's the idea that the only thing that is going to have eternal value, the only thing that is going to really be worth it in the end is righteousness, integrity, blamelessness, walking in a way that treats people fairly, that balanced scale. So really all of these first 7 verses, and we're going to continue to see this in chapter 11, is about treating people with fairness. And it's about walking in integrity, walking through life in uprightness, and the fact that that is what matters in life, and that's what is going to gain you wisdom. That's what's going to gain you friends, and do right by others is going to be the best way for you to do right in your own life. If your life is struggling and falling apart, and you're finding yourself at always chasing after things that are not fulfilling you, maybe you need to examine your life. Are you walking in a righteous and upright life, or are you trying to hide from something? You cannot escape from the dangers and the toils of life by continuing to be unfair, or treat people with unfairness, or treat people without integrity. The only way to get through life is through honesty and through righteousness. You cannot cover a lie with a lie. Eventually, it will be found out. And righteousness and integrity are what God expects from us. Verse 8, the righteous is delivered from trouble, and the wicked walks into it instead. Same thing. Righteous delivers you from trouble, but wickedness is going to walk you right into it, into trouble. With his mouth, this is verse 9, the godless man would destroy his neighbor, but by knowledge the righteous are delivered. Now here's a word picture we're setting up. Think about a neighbor has done something to you that maybe was not quite right or you didn't think was quite fair. Let's just say, for example, they planted a tree in the backyard and all the leaves of that tree are going to fall into your yard and you're going to be having to clean up all these leaves now. And so you're kind of perturbed with your neighbor because they've done this. What he's saying is that an ungodly man or an ungodly person is someone who will go over to that neighbor and use their mouth to just sort of chew them out and speak ill of them. They'll go talk to the other neighbors and other people. Can you believe what Bob did? He planted that tree. What an inconsiderate jerk, that kind of thing. That's an ungodly way of dealing with that situation. He says, but by knowledge, the righteous are delivered. In other words, knowing the proper way to deal with this situation, the proper way to apply a godly, integral life, this is how I'm going to be delivered from this situation. In fact, skip down to verse 12. It's again stating the same thing or creating the same word picture. Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. In other words, I'm not going to go belittle my neighbor because he planted a tree in his yard and I'm going to have to deal with cleaning up the leaves or the pine cones or whatever it's going to be. I'm not going to go and belittle and talk negative about him. A righteous way is to keep silent, is to love the neighbor, and to think, what's more important here? The fact that I'm going to have to rake up some leaves or the fact that I've got a neighbor who needs to know about the love of Jesus. I've got a neighbor who needs to know about the righteous way of God. And so it's putting your neighbor's needs, eternal needs, ahead of your own needs of raking up your neighbors. If you treat that neighbor with kindness and with gentleness, and you lead that neighbor into a righteous life, and they become a Christian, let's say, and they begin to live a life of discipleship, and they begin to live that right way, then maybe at some point he'll go, you know what, my tree's causing a mess in your yard. How about I come over and clean that up for you? I don't know. That's just sort of given a hyperbolous maybe example. But what Solomon is trying to tell us is it's not right to go and talk negatively or use our mouth and our tongue to lash out at a neighbor. That the wise person, the person of integrity, the person of righteousness is going to remain quiet, process this, and treat people with humility, treat people with respect, and allow things to sort of work out in the long term, in the long game. One of my sermons just in the last week was about faith is in it for the long game, that we don't just look at the immediate here and now and say, how do I handle this immediate situation? Sometimes we need to do that, but oftentimes we need to look into the long game and worry about the eternal relationship between you and that neighbor, or that neighbor's eternal relationship with him and God, and how you might be being used in that relationship, as opposed to just in that moment, how am I going to fix this because I got leaves in my yard sort of thing. So a wise person, a knowledgeable person, a righteous person looks at a situation and sees it for a bigger picture than just what's exactly happening right in that moment. I've known of some people, and I know some people now who claim to be Christians who, I mean, if their easement on their property is encroached upon 6 inches, they'll write a letter to the city complaining and rah, rah, rah. That's not the way a wise person treats things. A wise person says, you know what? I'll do what I need to do to maintain righteousness in this relationship. So think about that whenever you are encroached upon in your life. Be wise in how you handle it. Okay, verse 10. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. Verse 11 is an accompanying verse. By the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted. By the mouth of the wicked, it is overthrown. And this is very interesting. There's a lot in here, and I'm not going to take time to go into all of it, but basically what it is saying is even that everybody understands that there is a right way and a wrong way. And when the right way, or people that are living life the right way, when they have win the battle, win the victory, it's good for everyone. It's good for the whole city. And we can think about it like this, and I'm not being political here, I'm just using examples. Let's say there's a city council, right? Every city of any size has a city council. And there's some sort of an issue that comes up, and they're going to take a vote on this issue. And let's just say on this council, there's a man who is walking in integrity, who is looking out for others, who is treating people with humility. And there's another man who is prideful, who is looking out for his own self-interests. And let's just say there's a vote on some property and how to zone a property. And the righteous man looks at it and says, you know, what's best for the city is for that not to take place, for that to not be zoned in that way. And the other man says, you know what, I've got an invested interest in that, and if we can get this zoning passed, I'm going to be able to build a business there, and I'm going to be able to profit from that. So he's really pushing for that zoning to take place, but the righteous man is going, this is not what's best for the city, this is not what's best for everybody overall. And what Proverbs is saying is if the righteous man wins and gets his way, then everybody wins, everybody gets their way. If the deceitful man, if he wins, then it's going to go bad for everybody. And so it's about looking for the good for everybody. So how we can take this in our own lives is, number one, be a wise, righteous person of integrity, looking out not just for our own interests, but for the interests of everybody. And then when we get involved in some situation, and if we win that battle or win that scenario, that situation, make the right decision that's going to profit everybody, then everybody's going to win. And it doesn't have to be just a city. Maybe it's just your family. You are making a right decision that's going to be what's best for your family, and everybody's going to win. Maybe it's your church. You're making a right decision, not putting your own personal preferences ahead of something and being a person who's only looking out for their interests or their personal preferences, but you're putting the betterment of the church as a whole, and you're making decisions that are going to better the church or better the gospel, advance the kingdom. And so everybody's going to win whenever you are a person of integrity, whenever you are making the right choices and the right decisions, everybody's going to come out as a winner in the end. Okay, we've already talked about verse 12. Verse 13 says, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. Don't be a slanderer. Don't be a gossip. Don't go around revealing secrets of other people. Be trustworthy. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be somebody that can be confided in. That's what that simply means. Verse 14, where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety. If you have a decision to make, seek godly counsel, seek godly wisdom. And what this would say is maybe not just one, but seek the opinion or the advice of multiple people to know how you should make that decision. And when you do that, then you'll know you've made a secure and right decision. Think about it as one of those beds that has nails in it. And if it's got just one or two nails and you try to lay down on it, it's going to stab you in the back. But if it's a bed that's got 100 nails in it or 1,000 nails, and the more nails there are in that bed, you can actually lay down and you're supported and you're more safe and secure. And I've actually laid on a bed of nails before that was multiple nails, hundreds of nails in a piece of wood. You can lay down on it. It's not the most comfortable thing. I wouldn't want to sleep there all night, but it doesn't stab you in the back. But a single nail, if you lay down on that, it's going to stab you in the back, and you don't want to do that. All right, verse 15. Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer harm, but he who hates striking hands in pledge is secure. If you go all the way back to, I can't remember if it's chapter 1 or chapter 2, it talks about if you put up security for a neighbor, then flee from it, get out of it. Don't get yourself bound up as what's the right word here, a co-signer for somebody in some kind of a loan or some kind of a pledge or some kind of collateral. You want to be very judicious and very cautious about doing that because it's going to come back on you. So the advice from Solomon here is don't strike your hand in pledge with just anybody or with just a neighbor. You know, make sure that you know who you're getting into business with. Okay, whether that's buying a car or a house or any kind of dealings at all, make sure that you know who you are dealing with. Okay, let's see here. It was verse 15, verse 16. A gracious woman gets honor, and violent men get riches. All right, this one's a little bit difficult to understand, and there's some actually some Hebrew to English translation things that we need to make sure we get proper there. There's a couple of ways of understanding this word, this proverb. A gracious woman gets honor. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you are gracious and you are humble and you are kind, then you're going to get honor. You're going to get, some people are going to be, they're going to value you. They're going to think that your opinion has worth and that your presence is valued. You're going to get invited to the party. You're going to get popularity. People want to be around you if you are a gracious and humble person. But if you are a violent person, you may get riches, you may get wealth, but there's no honor with it. There's no fear or respect with it. It's just simply that you have plundered people. In fact, the Christian Standard Bible says that a violent person gets only riches, nothing else with it. You may have a fat bank account, but you don't have any friends, you don't have any respect from people, you're lonely, and that's no way to live life. In fact, there's other proverbs that are going to tell us that it's better to have peace and be poor than to have lots of wealth, but from gaining that from violence. Another way to understand this one is the word violent may be a little bit of an unfortunate translation. The word can mean just a person of influence, a person who is awe-inspiring or who strikes awe in someone else. So it can mean not necessarily somebody who is violent, but powerful. Somebody who really attracts attention. You know, these dynamic leaders type of people. And if you're a dynamic leader type of person, then you can gain riches. And if you do it this way, then it wouldn't be only riches. It wouldn't be the negative side. It would be the positive side. It would be a way of saying that a person of great power or of great influence or who is awe-inspiring gains wealth or honor or riches or gains power through that way. It's not necessarily a negative thing. It can be a positive thing. We all know people in our lives, whether it's pastors or whether it's teachers or coaches, that they are powerful, influential people. And man, they gain our respect and they gain our attention. And oftentimes that leads to even riches like wealth and amassing wealth and that kind of thing. But it doesn't have to necessarily mean that. And one of the ways that, and I said there's some Hebrew things in here that we need to understand translationally, is that the word woman is in there, but the word man in the second part of that verse is not there. So you can't take man and woman and say, well, it's one thing for one gender and something else for another gender. No, the word man is included in our English translations because it's in the Hebrew poetry, it's kind of saying it's all inclusive of everybody. Everybody's included here. Men, women, everybody's included. So it's a thing that we do to make it make sense to us in our English language. It also depends on some translations when you read this have the conjunction and some have the conjunction but. And it's just simply the way whether you put and or put but in there, again, to make it make sense to us in English language, would depend on whether you are looking at it as, if you use and, then you're thinking of it as a powerful, awe-inspiring person, that a generous woman gets honor, and a powerful man can receive riches. If you use the word but, like the Christian Standard Bible does, then it would be a gracious woman gets honor, but a violent man or a man who is nefarious gets only riches. That's the negative side. There's the positive side of looking at this proverb, and there's a negative way of looking at this proverb. Either way, what it simply means is, again, we don't want to be nefarious or violent or prideful in our actions. We want to treat people with fairness. We want to treat people with humility, with grace, and with patience. And when we do so, then we receive back honor or respect or popularity even. We receive back a way that makes others feel good about themselves, which is in turn going to make us feel good about ourselves. And we'll even see more about that in just a moment. In fact, it's the next verse, verse 17. A man who is kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, if you're treating people with kindness and with respect, with grace, with honor, it's going to go well with you. You're going to have a benefit from that, a return from that, a positive return from that. But if you treat people with cruelty, with violence, with disrespect, with pridefulness and arrogance, then you're going to end up harming yourself. it's not going to go well with you. You're not going to have the proper influence that you want to have, a righteous and integral influence. Okay, verse 18. The wicked man earns deceptive wages, but one who sows righteousness gets a sure reward. Now, what you want to look at comparing here is deceptiveness versus sure. So wickedness, you'll get some things from wickedness, but it's going to be deceptive or empty or hollow. I thought it was here and now it's gone. It's just your wicked ways are not going to be long-lasting or prosperous. But righteousness or integrity is going to be something you can be sure of, you can depend upon. So the things that you earn from a treacherous or a wicked lifestyle are not going to be things that are going to be long-lasting or be eternally sustaining or even sustaining in the longevity here upon this life. But what is going to be sure, what you can build your life upon is integrity and righteousness is what that proverb is trying to tell us. All right, verse 19, whoever is steadfast in righteousness will live, but he who pursues evil will die. Self-explanatory there. Those of crooked heart are an abomination to the Lord, but those of blameless ways are his delight. Again, self-explanatory, that the Lord does not take delight in crookedness or evilness. He takes delight in us walking righteous and blameless in his way. Verse 21, be assured an evil person will not go unpunished, but the offspring of the righteous will be delivered. So again, same different way of saying basically the same stuff. And come to verse 22. Got to be one of my favorite proverbs in all of Proverbs. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Kind of gives us some insight into Solomon's sense of humor even, you know. A gold ring in a pig's snout. Why would you put gold, a precious metal, into the snout of a pig? And now people say, well, I've seen rings in pig snout. It's a way to hang on to them or to guide them or whatever. Okay, fine. But the idea is not that there's a ring in the pig's snout. It's that it's a gold ring made of the finest precious metal. A gold ring in a pig's snout is still a ring in a pig's snout. Why would you use your finest precious metal and put it in the snout of a pig? And so the same thing is a woman without discretion or a beautiful woman without discretion. If you're a beautiful woman, and a beauty can be external beauty, it can be internal beauty, it can be someone who is fair to look at and good to be around, powerful and influential. But if you have no discretion or you lack sense, literally, if you're a fool, then, man, it's like all that wasted beauty, all that wasted talent, all that wasted lifestyle. I think about, movie stars who have all this talent and all of this popularity and fame, and they go get caught up in a life of drugs and alcohol and impure things, and they end up dying at a very early age because they have wasted their life. It's all that talent, all that beauty, all that could have been, and it was wasted because they were a fool or they had no sense. That's the basic meaning behind that proverb. Verse 23, the desire of the righteous ends only in good, the expectation of the wicked in wrath. You can think of the word expectation, other translations say hope. And so if you have what a righteous person desires or what a righteous person pursues is going to end in good, you're going to find that at the end of life you have ended up in the right way or you're at the right destination. But the hope of the wicked, the things that they've been hoping on or the expectations that they've had, when they get to the end of life, they're going to look back and go, I wish I'd have lived life differently. I wish I had lived life with righteousness instead of in this evil, nefarious way. Verse 24, one gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Generosity, living a life of honoring God, worshiping God through our tithe and through our offerings. We find that, man, we end up having plenty, and not being in want, because the Lord takes care of us and guides us when we're walking in a righteous and integrity, life of integrity. But those who are greedy and withhold and don't trust in the Lord and give the way they're supposed to give, they never have enough. They find themselves constantly in want. I love how Proverbs in the Old Testament is in perfect alignment with the teachings of the New Testament, that giving to the Lord and an act of worship we end up more blessed. You can't outgive the Lord. You can't outtrust the Lord. And that's Solomon, as the wisest man who ever lived, saying exactly the same thing. Okay, verse 25, whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters himself will be watered. Very interesting proverb here. Someone who is giving of themselves, it ties in again with the one right before it. If you are giving and you are blessing, then you are going to gain the enrichment of that. But if you're keeping only for yourself, well, you're going to have, but you're not going to have an abundance. You're going to have your need. You're going to be taken care of, but you're not going to have an abundance. And you're not going to, again, it's about treating people fairly and doing what is right instead of what is prideful there. The people curse him who holds back grain, but a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. Think back to number one, that grain, somebody that's being fair, treating fair, but this goes even beyond someone who is generous and who takes care of others versus someone who is selfish and holds back only for himself. People are not going to like somebody who's stingy and who holds back and won't share or won't sell, but someone who is looking out for the needs of others, they are going to get the blessings from the people. They're going to be taken care of too. Verse 27, whoever diligently seeks good favor, whoever diligently seeks good seeks favor, but evil comes to him who searches for it. Self-explanatory, whatever you look for, whatever way you live your life, you're going to get. You live your life in wickedness, you're going to get dishonor, and you're going to get struggle and strife. You live your life in integrity and uprightness and righteousness, you're going to get blessing, and you're going to get the joy of serving the Lord. Verse 28, whoever trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. Pretty self-explanatory there. Whoever troubles his own household will inherit the wind, and the fool will be the servant to the wise of heart. Think about inheriting the wind. What does that mean? It's gone. There's nothing to it. So if you are foolish and treat your own household with foolishness, there's not going to be anything for you. The fool will be servant to the wise of heart. That's just self-explanatory. If you're a fool and somebody else is living a life of integrity, eventually, in some way, the fool is going to serve the wise, the righteous person, the blameless person. Now, it may not be for a long time, and it may not be in the way that you expect or what you think, but ultimately, the righteous person will rule over the foolish person. All right. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and whoever captures souls is wise. I love that. I love that at the end of verse 30. Whoever captures souls is wise. That ties right back into Jesus' instructions to us in the Great Commission to go and make disciples. That the wisdom of the wise is about leading others in a life of righteousness, to lead others to the truth, to lead others in a way that they should go. That should be the fruit of our lives. That should be the wisdom that we seek for. Verse 31, if the righteous is repaid on earth, how much more the wicked and the sinner? Again, it's the whole idea, the whole concept that you get out of life what you put into it. That if you are lazy, you're going to have destruction and ruin. If you do not plant at the time of planting or harvest in the time of harvest, then you will not have when the need comes. But if you put righteousness and integrity into your life, then at the end of life, you will be blessed. And that's just the simple fact of saying there is a way of life that God has prepared for us and calls us to live, and that is a way of righteousness. There is a way of life that we try to live on our own humanness, and that leads to destruction. That leads to just a life that is not given to the things of God, but given to our own personal lives. Well, again, I want to invite you to join us. We go through these in person on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock here at Central Baptist Church in Oak Ridge, Tennessee at 130 Providence Road. Join us anytime. We get a lot more discussion. People get involved and they ask questions. Maybe there's something I skipped over that didn't make sense and you could ask a question. You can always reach out to us here at Central, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. You can reach me at j.rafty@orcbc.org. That's my email. I would love to interact with you. Let us know that you're out there, that you're enjoying these video series. Share them with others so they can enjoy them as well. Proverbs is such an important part of God's revelation to us, shaping our character and shaping our lives. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week for Proverbs chapter 12. Again, join us in person on Wednesdays at 4. Join us in person on Sunday mornings at 9:30 for Connect groups or at 10:40 for worship. We'd love to have you join us if you're in the Oak Ridge area. If not, I encourage you to find a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church in your area and to join there, serve the Lord there as we walk together through this life, looking forward to the day when Jesus will come again and restore all things back to the way that they should be. Well, this is Pastor James saying thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.